be the host. We'll give it a few more minutes. Hi, Tony. Hi, Aaron.
We're going live.
We've gone live.
Okay, 2 more minutes. Are we still waiting for Andy? Everyone have their coffees ready? It's quite chilly here this morning. Can someone quickly text Andy? Thanks, Josh. Okay, 1 minute to go. Okay, we're just waiting for Andy. I see 2 Heather Cons. Please change your name because it is really, really difficult. The one Heather Con is Larry. You just need your name changed, Larry. We'll get you there. And as always, I'm asking that if just keep your microphone off.
I've sent the link again to Andy. He should be in shortly.
Did he have trouble hopping on, Josh?
Yeah, the links he was clicking on, it was quite difficult for him to get in. If he's not in shortly, oh, here he is.
Good.
Morena Andy.
Hey, Andy.
I'll let Shannon talk you through changing your name.
All right, guys. So if you're on a laptop, it's very easy. You use your mouse and go over your own video feed, and you'll see 3 dots, which is which is a menu. There's a rename setting in there. If you're not on a laptop, you can go into the participants panel, and where your name is, it should have the menus, a menu button there or a more button that will give you the change name option. Or rename.
Oh, okay. I see that now. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you've been made host now anyway, so you can go to participants panel and change everybody's names for them if you want.
I just saw that. So, hi, we've got, I just want to, yeah, because there are 4 Heather Cons in that panel now, which makes it really difficult for me when people put their hands up. you need, but how do they know who is who? Because it just says Heather Con on the right-hand side.
So just change them to you can physically change them to.
But I don't know who it is.
Yeah. So change them to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you'll be able to see who it is.
Yeah,
So
I'm coming up as Heather Con. So
yeah. So you want to change yours through the participants panel if you're on an iPad. Andy?
yeah, but which Heather Con am I?
It'll have me written next.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Found it. Sorry.
So can people whose name is not showing up, please go to the participants panel, and everyone know how to get the participants panel. If you click at the bottom of your of the screen where all the pictures are, your participant panel should come up on the right hand side. Oh, I think we're all ready to go. Yes, all names are there. Everyone muted. Can I please ask that everyone mute their microphones? And also how it will work is, like last time, I'll give everyone ample opportunity to ask their questions and discuss. As hands are put up, after a discussion point, I'll then go through that because the computer will sort that for me. But please don't just start talking because it will be absolute carnage. But hi, welcome to our extraordinary council meeting this morning. I'm just going to ask Josh to open with a karakia for us.
Kia ora tātou te whānau. He mihi nunui, he mihi aroha kia koutou. I raro I te maru o tēnei wā COVID-19 tanga me ki. Ai, me noi tātou. E o ngā mano. Tukuna mai tō manakitanga mai ki a mātou ngā tangata e raro I tēnei maru o te karaunatanga me ki. Tukuna mai tō āwhina, tō manakitanga ki ngā pani, ki ngā rawakore, ki te whānau, ki ngā whānau pani o ngā mate kua pāhure. Tukuna mai tō ruatapu hei manaki, hei āwhi, hei tiaki hoki a mātou. Anei mātou e tuohu nē mui tō aroaro ka tuku I tēnei inui, I runga I te ngō tō mātou kaiwhakora I Ukraiti. Āmini.
Amen. Thank you for that. And also, welcome. I see just a little bit of housekeeping. As you can see also at the bottom, once you hover with your mouse next to participants, there's a chat button, which you can click on. And if someone has written something, you can see that it turns orange. And Heather just alerted us that Bill has been on for 20 minutes, could hear everything, but was on mute. He is rejoining and have asked Jesse to see if he can help, but maybe you can see him. Let me take a look, Bill.
If he's joined as a attendee instead of a panelist because of the format we're using. So he needs to not enter the ID manually. He needs to join via the link.
But just for practical reasons, wouldn't it be easier if Bill just rings someone and he listens in on their cell phone and he can then talk through there? Because I'm going to start the meeting now. If Heather can solve this or meeting support can solve this, I just don't want Bill to miss out, to have the opportunity also to talk, because at this stage, I can't see him because he's not on the meeting. It's great that he can hear us. Bill, I see you. If I click on attendees, allowed to talk. Can you hear me, Bill?
Yes, yeah, I can. Now I can, yeah.
Great, Bill. So what I'm going to do is leave your microphone open. So just remember, we can hear everything you say all the time, where everyone else is muted. So I will come to you and ask for comment, but just be mindful that your microphone is now open all the time. So if I do forget about you, Bill, please shout out anyway, but welcome.
Thank you for that, Your Worship. Morning, everyone.
Everyone is waving out, Bill. Everyone is saying hello. There's big waves coming your way. So,
so pleased to be there.
Fantastic. We're glad everyone could join. So councillors, and I'm also welcoming Aaron von Delden from the Gisborne Herald today. Thank you, Aaron, for being part of our meeting. So, councillors, we will start with our agenda. We have no apologies. Just correct me if I'm wrong, but according to me, everyone's here. Nods all around. Yes. No leave of absence. No acknowledgements and tributes. I think this is the appropriate time to just acknowledge the people that have passed away, our older citizens, especially down in Christchurch during this COVID-19 virus, just to acknowledge the families affected, the difficult time that they didn't have the opportunity to do proper funerals or be with their whānau when they passed away. So just a special thought, let's think of those whānau affected, also the people sick in hospital or healing from the virus. So from the Gisborne District Council, we just send them healing thoughts from us to them. Any public input and petitions? Extraordinary business, notices of motion, no adjourned business. So councillors, I ask everyone to go to page 4. We're going to open up the report that Pauline has prepared for us. Thank you very much, Pauline. I think we will follow the same process as last time, Nadine, where I will pass over to you and then you can pass over to Pauline. Councillors, as Pauline goes through her, so she'll talk us through the report, please put up your hands and you'll see the little blue hands going right up at the panel at the right. And that gives me an indication. And when I see quite a few hands, then we'll interrupt and just ask questions of Pauline. But at this stage, I'll wait for Pauline until she finished, and then we can ask all our questions and talk about what's in the paper. Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just in terms of the paper that you've got in front of us, I'll just quickly introduce it and then hand over to Pauline if there's any further points that she wishes to make. But we've given you 3 options for your preferred option to go into the annual plan for 2021. You'll recall the status quo preferred option is 4.87, which is currently out for consultation. We've had a look at what could be done in terms of legalities, service levels, debt levels, and have come up with the additional options of 3.2 and or 2.2. We had discounted a 0% rates increase, although it is an option, it does require significant change and is problematic in terms of debt, service levels, and also it's the blanket approach, blanket benefit. We've also provided for rates for emissions should the incidence of rates impact more significantly on other groups, on some groups than others, because at this stage we're unable to model how those incidences will run, and we'll need a bit more time to do that. Just a reminder that those drivers initially for your status quo 4.8 were to improve water quality and respond to the increased number of resource consents as well as our depreciation costs. The 3.26% option, the implications of that is debt levels increase, interest costs are higher, and we would not save in advance for the wastewater treatment plant. Implications of the 2.2% options, which is basically at the rate of local government inflation, is that we would be staggering in staff resources. So we may have a few issues around consents. With our debt and interest levels would increase, and there'll be higher rates in the later years. So provided those, as I've said, provided the options, we've taken into account the legalities of it all, noting that the prevailing legislation, local government legislation for annual plans hasn't changed. And yeah, I think that's all really I just wanted to canvass. Pauline?
Actually, what you've just said was probably the overarching things that it was leading into the main discussions today. And then the only other things is just touching on that same principles and applied approach that when you're looking at considering the decisions today, and that's basically what's set out in the Local Government Act. That is the first principle being the balancing the needs of the current community without transferring or overburdening the future generations. And that means any costs that are deferred or funded through loans shifts this year's rates burden to future years, and rates will be steeper in those years as a consequence. In effect, that principle is about how much you collect today's rates against how much you need to recoup in the future. Secondly, there is the principle about debt being considered against reducing investments required in infrastructure and ensuring that the region is fit for purpose in the future. Lastly, the overarching principle is whatever approach that is taken, it needs to be prudent. And that means you have an overall assessment of where we are now and what will happen in the future. But effectively, I think Nadine summed up everything else.
Thank you for that, Pauline. Thank you, Nadine. Councillor, so I'm going to open the floor now. I'm just asking that you use your little blue hand. Thank you. I've already seen Meredith going up, Larry going up. So I'm now going to open the floor. Meredith, you go first, then Larry, then Andy Cranston. Thank you. Just unmute yourself, and when your question is finished, just mute up again. Thank you, Meredith.
Kia ora, thank you everybody. Atamari here, koutou. Listen, Pauline, Nadine and all of us, one of the constant rhetoric throughout this report I saw was the word uncertain. And so I just hear again the three principles you've noted, but in the time that we are currently in with regard to COVID-19, there still appears to be a kind of a fair amount of uncertainty. So, Pauline, when we look at those principles, how do we marry them up to this pandemic space when we're still very uncertain around the onflow, even going into level 3? What are our certains? I mean, I'm still trying to figure that out, I guess, as many people are. So when I hear you speak about those principles, I'm still unclear about, we still have to make decisions based on uncertain.
So what was considered within what you have is looking at all the tools that you've got available, and that is looking at the decisions of what rates increases or whatever that will be for next year. But you've also got other tools such as using postponements and the rates remissions. Those three collectively should be able to be a little bit agile in what you need to do in coming in the future, and it sort of allows you to move with the times.
Oh, sorry, can I, through your worship, if I can just add to that, I think the issue, the issue is that we don't have full clarity on what the impacts are going to be of COVID-19 on this district in particular. We've got some data that's coming through around how many businesses have picked up wage subsidies. We've seen an increase in the unemployment, uptake of unemployment benefit, according to MSD. It's too early to determine the full impact of this. So what we've tried to do, as Pauline has kind of pointed to, is that it's taken a balanced approach to this for the immediate term and tidy this all up, or try and tidy and make some more sense of this through your long-term plan.
Thanks for that, Nadine. Larry.
Yeah, thank you. Kia ora, everyone. Yeah, you mentioned the fact that the rates burden will be going, or could be spread to future generations, and that's obviously a concern for whatever level that we, whichever option that we go for the rates. But we've also got applications in for the government for spade-ready projects with our wastewater management. So if we get funded for that, well, that's going to be a big game changer, and that won't impact on future rating, especially if we get some other projects funded as well by the government. So there's certainly a lot of uncertainties, but is it probable? I mean, what are the chances of us getting accepted for and getting the funding that's required for these projects via the government? That'll help with our rates for the future.
Through your worship, it's unknown, Councillor Foster. I think that we're hopeful, but if you have a look at it, the list that we've got, and with those projects that are on the list have been in our LTP, some even there when they had the LTCCP. And so a lot of councils will be in the same boat. So I suspect it's going to be heavily oversubscribed and highly contestable. So we can't kind of bank that that'll come through. We can only hope. But yeah, it's too hard to say.
Right. Okay. No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry. I had a regional sector meeting yesterday, and this was raised where there is total oversubscription. They think it is going to be like a lolly scramble because everyone, every council, everyone is putting in anything because everyone is in the same boat. So I don't think we should hold our breath too much. I think there will be total oversubscription. Thank you for that. Andy Cranston, you are next.
Yeah, thanks. One of the sentences from the Local Government Act, Local Government New Zealand, is prudence requires an overall assessment of circumstances and a long-term view with future financial and no financial consequences. And what may seem prudent now may actually impact badly in the long term. And that's what our staff has been alluding to through this discussion. So there is going to be hardship out there. There's no two ways about that. But we really need to be in a position where we're hitting that hardship rather than just, it could be that 70% of our community is in the same place. It could be higher, it could be, I doubt it would be much lower. We really need to be acting on that 30% that's really got that financial hardship. So, I mean, the actual rating impact, I mean, you're looking at difference between 1 and 2 of 48 cents a week, and you're looking at the difference between 3 and 4 of something like 92 cents a week. So that most of the community, probably as much as 70%, may actually be quite comfortable bearing that. So there's going to be hardship on council as well. So we've got to appreciate that the hardship's not only on the ratepayer, it's also going to be on council. So I really want to get a handle on what the assessment of deferrals and remissions is. So, you know, how we can actually use those remissions and referrals to really impact on the people that do have the hardship and do need the support. And, you know, things like, I mean, I would even be up for things like dropping the penalties on the rates and really identifying early those avenues of support for the real hardship rather than just this approach that we've got to, you know, saving the ratepayers in general, whereas a lot of them don't need saving. So is there any way of getting clarity around how we can use those tools that we've got which are more directed?
Pauline.
Through your worship, we don't know the impact of how many is directed, but you're right. The rates remission is the tool that can be used for to assess that those that have the inability to pay to apply for it and be assessed on those terms. We've always had those policies, but in this report we're saying that it probably needs more. And there are advantages with saying that there is a rates remission. One of the advantages is that it's hopefully one-off. It's not an ongoing cost. So that means when the rates are levied in the following year, there is not a steep increase, but means that if we had to pay it back over time, it can be a smooth over the forthcoming years. So yes, they can be used. It's definitely a way to do that. There is other ways that other councils are using more of the postponements. So some people, some businesses is a cash flow issue, and some that they say that it's not just for the 3 months, it may be 6 months. And so that they're offering, if they apply for it, for that cash flow, that they pay it back after 6 months time. So that those tools and policies that we do have at council are there to actually aid this process too.
So just 6 months, but we're able to pay the rates from 6 months on, how would that impact on council budgets?
I probably didn't catch all of it, but I think I know what you were saying. You're saying if we extended it for a longer postponement, what was the impact and cost to council. So one of the things within the postponed ones is the say the transfer of cost of interest, not penalties, because they couldn't pay by that time. So we say we alleviate that and don't apply that, but the cost of interest, which would be council's cost of interest. That means it's neutral to those ratepayers that can pay, and on those that pay at a later time. But so in effect, it should be negligible or no actually cost impact to council. It just may mean that we have to raise our overall debt, but the interest should be covered from those people that are asking for deferment for postponement.
Does that answer your question, Andy? Good. Morning, Tony, you are next.
Morena. So on that note about the interest, paragraph 57 of the report talks about council's low rate of interest. Can we please get an indication of what interest rate ratepayers would pay if they were to have a deferment on their rates payment? That's my first question. And I've got a couple more, please, after that.
Pauline.
Your Worship, that would be our rate or average rate, which is about 4.5. So it's our average rate of cost of interest, not just from some lower rates that we have, it would be the average rate.
Okay. So my next question is, I note in the report talk about an estimated $840,000 shortfall of non-rate revenue as a result of the current situation. So we need to be cognizant of that. And moving forward, the rates remission, I'm still struggling to get my head around this. The report says that we have 2 rate remission schemes at the moment, and I raised this last week at our workshop. I've done some more searching on it. The Department of Internal Affairs provides a rates remission back scheme of up to $640 per household per annum. Is that one of the schemes we're talking about? Because the report seemed to suggest that we could apply up to $1 million towards the cost of applications as opposed to the actual cost of the rates remissions. So can we have some really good clarification around that, please?
For your Worship, so the rate rebate is a central government scheme, and it is applied through DIA. It has nothing to do with the rates remissions that we are talking about here. So they're entirely separate, and people in their own right can apply for the rates rebate. We apply it and put it through our systems if it is approved, and it's basically an assessment of household income, and the parameters, the central government point that if it's between 32,000 to household income up to 38, there is a parameters that they can apply up to a rebate 640. Our rates remissions is still a cost, if you like, to us because, or it's a reduced income to us. We have to even net off our income. So we're saying if we had a number of hardships remissions, that a provision of at least $1 million, that would be what we would not be expected to get. So it's either a cost through reduced income or a cost of an expense that we're offsetting.
Are you able to give us an indication roughly of what the parameters are? So we know the DIA is a household income of between 34 and 39,000. What's our threshold for our rates remission scheme we've just talked about?
For your Worship, it's a little bit different. It's basically based on the inability to pay, whereas the DIA is based on a household income. So on the current way that the scheme works is that people apply and they show that there is difficulty to meet the costs of everyday needs, and they apply for the hardship, and then it is assessed based on that and what they can afford to pay for the rates during that year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. we move on to Kiri, then it's Pat, then it's Shannon, and then Bill. I'll give you an opportunity.
Hi, thank you. So I want to follow on a little bit from where Tony left off, actually. Well, rewind slightly. My first question, looking through this report, was actually with the first point of the recommendations, where it makes the note that COVID-19's had an impact on council budgets for the current year and is expected to have a significant impact in the following year. I don't think we've seen a budget, have we? And I'd really like to know much more about what the modelling looks like in terms of what we are foreseeing for next year based on what we've seen to date. I just think it's really difficult to quantify the scale of the impact for ourselves as an organisation, as a council, without seeing those budgets. Because like you say, we've got that $850,000 figure in this report, but beyond that, there's not really a lot to flesh it out. So that would be my first point. The second point was that our rates remission policy, as I've read it, doesn't currently have any means for us to assist our businesses. It's all targeted at, in most cases, well, in all cases, it's either rural land or families themselves. So there isn't a mechanism at the moment to help us assist our businesses, which are who are easily the most at risk from this current development. The closest option in there is an economic development remission, but that's aimed at new businesses, which obviously we can expect relatively few of those, and it's actually existing businesses that are going to need our help. So, so those were the 2 points that I wanted to raise. Are we going to revisit our remissions policy to make sure that it's fit to help the people who need the most help and who will make the biggest difference, getting our feet back up, back on the ground, I suppose, getting up and running. And just in terms of the cost, the $1 million cost associated with the remissions, I'm not clear on whether that's an additional million or whether we've already got 570,000 that's claimed typically within a year. So are we saying that we're expecting an additional 400 and something thousand, or is it $1 million above what we would typically have available within that cap? I read it to mean that under the cap, that million would be total, and so the amount that we're making available is that 400 or something more than what would typically be used. Those are my questions. Thank you.
For your worship, there's a few questions there. The forecasts of where we are and what we're expecting, it's all dependent on how long we're in lockdown and how some of our activities and how can we do the services that we have. So while the initial forecast was saying GoCags goes out to 30th of June, what was that? That was that impact. Goes beyond that, we would have to start assessing that and making scenarios if we're in level 3 for longer, or what does level 2 for what of the services that we have. So we don't have that, but we will chart to do those kind of scenarios and impacts as we get more in details to hand. The extreme, you're right, but there are 3 hardships remissions. There's 2 of them that is relating to lifestyle and residential, and then there's Maori freehold land, but there is a 3rd remission that can be available made for businesses. It's extreme circumstances, and so we can apply that for those that are businesses. We are limited in that we cannot change any other policies for the rates for emissions that you have. You would have to go out and consult again. However, we have enough of the remissions within there to be able to offer all sectors of the community and businesses. As to the $1 million threshold, sorry if it wasn't clear, it is in addition to what we already have. So it was saying, based on the different scenarios, what was the shortfall? We had about 2.9 million, and we were accounting for a certain amount of it. We're saying, okay, based on that, there's going to be at least another $1 million if you just take from that alone that you might need. So it's in addition to.
Right. Just in terms of adopting an annual plan without looking at the scenarios for the year that we're actually planning for, I'm not very comfortable with that, because I don't know that we're cognizant of what our different scenarios could look like. We're adopting an annual plan based on, as Meredith highlighted, a suite of uncertainties that we can't be too certain of. But getting an idea of those scenarios would probably have given us a level of comfort that if we were adopting a likely scenario B, that our annual plan and our rates take would fit within those parameters. At the moment, we're adopting an annual plan, really stabbing in the dark as to what next year looks like. That's, I think, what's making this process quite difficult. Or at least I'm finding it quite difficult personally. That's not a question, sorry, that's just a comment. Thank you.
Sorry, can I, through your worship, I've had to switch to my cell phone, so it's going to be quite difficult for me. But can I just to clarify on that point, Councillor, we are not asking for the adoption of an annual plan at this stage. It's the preferred, your preferred option. So if that preferred option is different from the 4.87% rate proposed rates increase, then we will be able to do further work and provide that clarity. But noting things will be different going into the 2021 financial year, with the various impacts depending on how those alert levels are managed nationally and impact regionally. But we do have a few tools that we can manage to a certain extent some of that uncertainty there if and when it should happen. And we could probably go into more detail around that once we come to the confirmation of the adoption of the annual plan.
You're still on mute, Your Worship.
Apologies. I've been talking to myself quite a bit then. I said, thanks, Kerry. Pat, you next, and then it will be Bill.
Thank you. I would just like to ask for an answer to the questions that I flagged this morning. With respect, if we use $1 million of the, if you like, reserve that we've accumulated primarily from the increased budget of funding from FAR, which is from NTA, potential for NZTA to determine that GDC doesn't need that higher FAR rate that we get at the moment, and what level of consideration of council of please? You're on mute again.
Yeah. Goody, I should drink more coffee. Pat, if you can turn your video off, because what's happening, I think that your voice is dropping off. So if you can just turn your video off, sometimes that then gives more clarity when you speak.
Well, I mean, the staff officers have got the question. I sent it to everybody this morning. So could we have the answer to that question, those two questions, please?
Thank you, Pauline. You saw Pat's email this morning. Thank you.
One of the questions, so I'll hopefully see how it answers if it, and I didn't quite catch all of the voice. But essentially, what happens is that NZTA gives us a grant based on the work that we have completed, and we fulfilled that when we completed that work. And so it's not conditional on what, it's basically contribute to our local share, and the fact that we saved some of that grant money to put it to reserve is not dependent on an NZTA decision. So those are your funds and your reserves to how to use.
But supplementary, my real question is, we have a higher FAR rate than in many other areas. So I think it potentially has, have we thought about what impact that might have going forward? and NZTA may determine to reduce our FAR rate if we aren't using it on roading. Have you thought about that?
I think that it's basically you could have used it at that stage. There's two things probably that came into the indication. It was based on our deprivation index that we actually had. And the fact at that time there was a decision not to use that to reduce the rates at that time, it says we could put it to a reserve. So I think that is a point or a statement as at that time. There were other things that we actually had, if you remember, from 2017, 2018, or even 2016, we had severe costs that we actually had to supplement and put towards that. We're about 5 or 6 million plus. In addition to that, the actual emergency works at the rate that NZTA gave to us was lower. They had indicated before things had changed last year that they would have given us back pay 850K, but things changed and they didn't. So I believe it is still the funds that you actually have got is what you have used or saved to use how council decides, because you have incurred a significant cost in the past associated with the roading network.
And thank you. And supplementary to an earlier conversation, Your Worship, the issue of any remissions and then the subsequent charging of interest, I think it needs to be made really clear to our listeners and to everybody that it doesn't mean the rates will never be paid. My understanding is that that rate will, unpaid, charging interest, will still sit against that property. Am I right?
Postponement, yes. Rates remission for hardships does not.
Right.
Thank you, Pat. I'm going to ask Bill next, and then it's Shannon, and then it's Sandra. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Interesting. I happen to agree with Pat regarding the FAR funding. Prior to this, it was used for roading and emergency work. That's all I'm going to say on that one. In terms of our rate remissions and rating in general, we have to be fair to everybody. I think personally there's not enough information here to enable us to fairly judge what the impacts of 3.26 or 2.2 or 4.8 is going to be. I mean, and in the past we have always had a spreadsheet that tells us what the rates rise in the Waikura Valley will be, what the rates rise in the hinterland and the back of Gisborne will be, how it will impact on the residents in Gisborne and all our smaller communities and the business community. And we can see whether then we are being fair. And the last point I need to make, and far be it for me, because we have no one that speaks on behalf of Murray, and I don't profess to be that spokesman, but when it comes to hardship and remissions, Murray in general are whakama. In other words, they're embarrassed when they have to come in and plead poverty, and they would much prefer to suffer the embarrassment of not paying the rates as against fulfilling the obligation when they can't afford it. I think that and it impacts on a large number of our wider community, both those living in the city and in the rural areas. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. But I prefer to sit and listen and wait until we get into the nitty-gritty to justify either 3.26 or 2.2 or the status quo. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Bill. I'm going to move on to Shannon.
Your Worship, I think I'm a little bit in the same place as where Kerry is with this whole process. I feel like we aren't doing justice to the requirement of prudence in our decision making. I particularly think that our stance of not making any long-term plan changes or any amendments to the annual plan and simply doing a and simply borrowing to pay for a business as usual annual plan doesn't fit the bill. It doesn't mean that we're operating in the current environment. It doesn't mean that we're taking it into account whatsoever. The justification for not making changes being around the requirement from Local Government Act to meet a certain deadline only stands true when you don't look at it in the context of what we are allowed to do. And we can delay our annual plan and adopting it. It simply means that there is a possibility it can be challenged, but it's typically only challenged if there is something drastically different and we haven't been through consultation. The other reasoning was that we weren't able to set rates and to collect rates, but that's not the case as far as I've read. We would have 1 quarter of an annual rates bill that we would be able to charge. So we would be able to buy ourselves 3 months to go through the process and charge the same amount of rates as we have this year to next year. And that's the advice from LGNZ and Solgum. So we could do 1 more ratings bill for the first quarter of 2021 without any change. And that would allow us the time to actually make the decisions and alterations to our annual plan that would be appropriate in this environment. What we're discussing today is just how much debt we're willing to take on in borrowing to relieve our community. We're not addressing any of the practical things, which is, are we still doing the right thing for our community in the business that we're doing? When we talk about prudence and the fact that we've got all of these, like the irony of shovel-ready projects being prudent is that they were all constructed and all of the thought process behind it was completed before COVID-19. If a project is shovel-ready today, it was generated before the event. And I think that's what's leading to the lolly scramble of applications to central government, is that we have projects, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're suitable for today. My personal preference would be to accept that we're going to delay the adoption of an annual plan, to go to the drawing board on what is our desires for this annual plan, to consult with our community, to use the ability to do an interim rates and claim the first quarter based on last year's figures, so that we can do a proper job of assessing if we're doing the right thing in this environment. I think the percentage discussion then almost becomes irrelevant, because we haven't gone to the foundations and changed what we're doing. Yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Nadine, would you like to respond?
So through your worship, I think the main thing is, once you start pushing out your timeframes around annual plans, buying more time, you're starting to creep into your long-term plan. Essentially, we want to have the long-term plan thinking, strategizing and approach done so that we can start early engagement around to make sure we've got having the right debate around October. That's effectively 6 months from now. So if that rethink is going to be happening now for the purpose of the annual plan, then I would say, well, why would you not just do that for your long-term plan? Because not only do you start putting, the other thing is that we don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks' time. We're assuming that we're going to go to alert level 3. We may not, alert level 2. We may not. We might be bouncing backwards and forwards between that. So I think it is around really getting our sense of what the true impacts are. And our staff have been thinking about this. We know that there are some activities that we need to take a closer look at, that we need to be talking with you all about, to see if things don't change, what are we going to do in this area? But that's not a quick thing that we can turn around within the next month. This is something that we need to discuss and take a considered long-term approach to.
No, Nadine, I don't understand that it's not a short-term fix, but my personal opinion is that we shouldn't be waiting till October to start discussions around what the impact is and what we should be planning for. My opinion is that we should be planning immediately, and reprioritization being our first step, to recovery, making sure that I don't want to wait till October for a plan that's going to be launched in 24 months' time. It's not fast enough for me.
Okay, thank you for that, Shannon. We're going to move, Pauline.
Just to reply for that, just going to remember that the Local Government Act states that you cannot amend, reduce or significantly change a level of service without requiring an amendment to the existing LTP. The existing, so what we would have to do is adopt an annual plan, amend the years 3 to 10, and we don't have the time to be able to do that. Even if you've got 1 month's grace, because it is externally audited, and they have to come and assess what you have doing, then it goes out to submission. Whatever comes back from after listening to the submissions, you then have to go through the auditors again. The process normally is at least a minimum of 9 months, but we could do it at a speed at 6. But we could not be able to set the rates. A 1 month grace might be granted, but not a 3 months thereafter in October.
That's all addressed in our report, Pauline, on pages 21 and 22 from LGNZ and Solgum's recommendations around late adoption of annual plans and interim rates. So neither of those are arguments to. They're only compliance matters. They're not factual in that we can't do anything else. We can adopt late. We can make amendments to the LTP. We can do interim rates in the event that we don't have new set rates, which would give us an additional 3 months of time, not 1 month, which would give us enough time to do consultation. That's what I'm suggesting.
For your worship, just to clarify, why we have 1 month, it is only 1 month. We have the ability to reset that in July by using installment 4 and resetting and using that for the first one in July. Things you must also understand, you cannot enact that new plan until it has been adopted. So you can't do anything within the next year until that new plan is adopted. That Simpson and Grierson, through other workshops and talking to the community, says 1 month, other than what you can extend it for consultation for an annual plan, is what is probably deemed doable, but anything beyond that is nearly impossible. And that is the same approach for every other council. It is just the physicality of being able to get it audited, changed, and do the whole process.
Thank you, Pauline. Okay, we are going to move on to Sandra. And then I see Kerry and Pat coming up again, but I'm going to give Terry and Amber first go before we go into a second round. So, Sandra.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, everyone. First question, I've just got two. First one's just a very quick answer, if I could, please. Where are we in our revaluation cycles as a region?
It will occur, for Your Worship, it will occur this year, and is part of the Valuer General. We're starting to get some of that assessment by June. So we still are expecting to do it within the timeframes that we have normally going to.
Okay, thank you for that. Because that sort of leads into my next comment, I guess, and question around my concern with, well, if we go too low in our expectations as a result of COVID-19 now, effectively we are kicking the can further down the road on some of our investments. it worries me, and I'm happy to take advice on this, what the environmental and in some cases societal impacts will be as a result of pushing debt further out. We need to be making sure that businesses can do business now, and given our capacity for primary industry here, we need to make sure that we continue to go forward. That's probably a comment as much as anything, but I just want to ensure, and I guess my question is around, do these changes, the percentage changes, slow business? Will they slow business down at all, or do we run the risk of slowing down what we're hoping to encourage? Is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Pauline.
Depending on the level that it goes to, there is the issue that occurs. You have the ability to reset your next LTP and what your terms and conditions and levels that you have, and whether it's still a back to basics focus and focusing on the critical infrastructure. You could reset that and say, is there not as much done as what we expected to do? Regardless, the impacts that happens in the following years, so mostly in terms of the 3.26, if you like, it probably can be the following year under a 5% through reset. The year after that becomes more difficult because the wastewater treatment plant comes on track, and there's about a $2 million with the overall operating cost, which are what they are. So there are difficulties, and when you lower the reset that you are starting with, that means it's a harder increase to get to that point in the future. So it is difficult, whatever sort of things that you have, and whatever, which is probably why the zero was discounted. For that was becoming too difficult to be able to come back from less than a 8 or 9% increase in rates in the following years.
Sorry, I'll just add on to that. So in terms of that, Councillor Faulkner, is that the options that were provided give that balance so that we're not stopping a lot of those infrastructure projects, so that we can play our part in terms of economic stimulus. So there are impacts, as Pauline said, just over this stand down period where we've had to stop, but behind the scenes the guys and girls have been planning so that come Tuesday we'll be able to resume a lot of those activities so that businesses that contract to us can get up and going.
Thank you for that. The other thing I would like to add is, and it's the first I've really heard of it, is the option that Councillor Burdett spoke about, which was the spreadsheet on rating impacts across our various communities within Tairāwhiti. So if there's anything along those lines available to us, that would certainly help in my decision making, that's for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra. I'm going to go to Terry next. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Really interesting conversation. I too sort of surprised. I thought maybe a fuller budget based off what we know now, but I understand we're sort of in a corner. We have to make a decision based around whether it's 3.26 or 4.87 or whatever. And personally, I stick to where I voted the other day. I'd like to see it actually stay up around the 4. I'm really concerned about the flow-on effect, what that might do. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. We're going to go to Amber Dunn. Amber Dunn.
Thank you. I'll start with one question that I've got regarding the rates remission and the FAR rate. My understanding I've come to is that the rates remission is essentially, and the use of the FAR rate or debt, is to protect us against the loss of rates revenue as a result of hardship. to get that loss of rate revenue flows on to affect our ability to deliver the services, etc., to our community, and we actually don't want that. Is that a correct way to be looking at this use of the FAR rate, Pauline?
Yes, effectively. If we have provided a reserve in the past, let's use that to mitigate the effects in the future.
Because it flows on to affect everything else we do, right? When you get that loss of rate revenue. Okay. There's a couple of things I want to say. Uncertainty going ahead is an absolute given. We have to accept that because we don't know what sits in the future and we can't control it. What we can control is where we make investments and what we will deliver for our people. And I want us to focus on what it is that we can control as decision makers in the region. What we can control is how best to help our city and our region bounce back from this pandemic, from this massive disruption that we've got. Much like I've just heard Councillor Worsnop and Dowsing say, I too also feel like we need more information on what it is that we can control going forward, and to ensure that the money that we're investing in the coming year will actually help our region to bounce back. And at the moment, I just don't feel like I have a good enough picture or comfort to say, yep, what we plan to do in 2020, 2021 is going to help this region bounce back from the pandemic. So what I really need to know is, are we doing the right things in the coming year that help our region bounce back fast, better and smarter from this pandemic? And that discomfort that I have is affecting my ability to make the decisions that we have in front of us. I don't think we're talking about making significant changes to the annual plan. All I'm really asking for is, can we get better insight into the investments that are coming in the next year? So we've got the plan as it is, what's in there. Can you give us a really simple report that says, this investment's going to be made here and it's going to help our region respond this way. We're making this investment here and it helps in this way. Because that way we know what's coming in the next year is going to help us respond. And because I don't have that information, but I think it's really valuable, would be, it would bring me much comfort to have that information. And I think that's essentially what Councillor Worsnop and Dowsing was saying, is what's in there, should we be looking at it, is the order right, are the priorities right, are we doing the right things? And I don't really have the confidence in that area in terms of the decisions that we're making. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Nadine, your hand is up.
Thanks for your worship. I think the issue here is that there's an assumption we know the impacts. There's an assumption that in 2 weeks' time, we're absolutely clear on how COVID-19 has impacted on our community, and no one knows that. I don't know that. And so it's something that while you try to plan for the best that you can do, those impacts aren't really going to be fully known until we're maybe another 2-3 weeks down the track. We're surmising, as I said, around the executive team as to what might happen in what particular activity should we not go to alert level 1 for a while. But again, we don't know that. We don't know what that time frame is around that, so which makes this all the more difficult. And I think if we go back to the starting point for this, the starting point for this was around, let's council look at how you can do your part in terms of easing the rates burden on the community. If this is now, the discussion is around, well, are we doing the right things in the right way for this uncertain space that we're in, then that takes more time to do, and the time that we had to kind of bring this back from where we did provide budgets for a 4.87 to the options that you've now got in front of you. So I appreciate the concern or frustration about us not being able to provide all the answers, but we don't have them at this stage. And what we're doing at this moment is trying to work out all the possible scenarios, and in order to provide you with information to make an informed decision. We don't have that at the moment.
I'm just going to chime in there. That's not really what I'm saying or what I was getting at. Uncertainty going forward's a given. We know that. What we also know is that council controls drinking water to the city. It controls roading. It controls wastewater. There's certain things there that we must ensure we are investing in the right places so that more disruption in those basic essentials don't come as a result of us not making the right investments in those places. So I think we've got to put the uncertainty aside, and as I say, focus on the things that we are meant to be doing and ensuring that we actually are making sure that they are working they're fit for purpose. They're not going to be disrupted going forward. We're not going to be responsible for slow down in anything that happens. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Are our services that we provide going to continue to be running at a really good level of service going forward so that our community can continue to do what it needs to? So I'm going completely away from the uncertain area. We know there's so much uncertainty out there, but I want to be absolutely certain that what council is responsible for and delivers is going to keep going ahead at a good level of service, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Pauline or Nadine, did you want to comment on that, or can I move on?
No, just noted. Thanks.
Noted. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
Next, we move to Kerry and then Larry. Thank you, Kerry.
Okay, so I've got a couple of points I wanted to sort of elaborate on in relation to things that other people have said. Firstly, in terms of departure from significant departures from our annual plan, where do we sit, given that we will have definitely departed in a significant way from the services that we would normally be delivering for the last 4 weeks, and will continue to depart probably for the next 4 weeks? How does that fit within the environment that we operate in, and what does it change, if anything? I would assume that it sort of gives you a license really to reassess where we stand going forward. Although obviously there's a lot to flesh out in terms of how. In terms of the economic stimulus packages that we had announced before lockdown, to what extent do they alleviate the demands on our budget in regards to roading, given that we are essentially looking to steal FAR funds essentially and repurpose them? Do we have an ability to legitimately say, look, the level of service is not going to be affected based on the fact that we've also got this economic stimulus, which is quite specifically going into roading in one portion at least? How do those things fit together? And I think my overarching point initially was really less about like Amber was saying. I wasn't intending to say, look, let's not deliver anything. Let's just say, right, everyone have free rates. It's more about everybody in our community will be doing a stock take of what they're doing and how they're doing it to make sure that they're okay for the future. To what extent are we demonstrating solidarity with our ratepayers by doing the same thing? You know, we know we've got some essential stuff that we have to deliver, and we have to deliver it well for the sake of our community. But what amongst what we do isn't that essential and would be potentially much better received if it was available in things like remissions in the event that things did go quite badly in the coming year, which lots of projections say we don't know. But do we need levers there that we can pull over and above what we've got now? That was more my point. So just to make that clear. So yeah, did you get those first two questions? Yeah, cool.
Okay, Nadine. Yep, Nadine. Thanks, Kerry.
Sorry, I was just trying to find my mute button. Okay, so the first one was around the the work around
Like the
does
significant.
Yeah, the significant difference. So there has been, I think, part of the issue is that there are staffing impacts. So there's employment relationship issues that we need to be really clear that we would have to make significant changes like that, and the justification for doing so. And so what we've been looking at is the redeployment of those staff into roles where we know we need more people in support. For example, into our ECC, for those ones that we weren't able to continue with. So there were about 20 odd odd staff that didn't have work, and over the last 4 weeks. So we've been looking at making sure that we can redeploy them across. Some of the other activities, that's certainly something that we've been going through as an exec team, looking at what are the implications for this? What are the efficiencies that we've gained too from working in this environment and operating in a new kind of style? But that's something I want to have further conversation with council around that. But that's why, it's just in terms of timing around this annual plan and looking at all the other things that have come through and what we've been thinking at an operational level, it's just we just need a bit more time to get that worked through. The roading and economic stimulus. So the thing around the PGF funding, so we've got PGF2, so the accelerated, we're calling PGF2 accelerated roading, and then the PGF3, which was the redeployment package. They are tied specifically to projects. So anything that we've put by way in our RLTP, this would be above what we've currently got there. So we wouldn't be able to say kind of we're going to reduce in this level because we've got another 20 million here. We've kind of added it on to our business as usual.
I guess my point is, though, because it's an over and above and we're doing things in advance of when we would normally be doing them, does it reduce the likelihood of needing to draw on that FAR rate or not?
Oh, okay. No, so that FAR rate in terms of the one that's in the paper around what we would use, no. So we would not need to, yeah, you're right. It would reduce the likelihood of us having to go there. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move to Larry. Thank you, Larry. You can unmute yourself.
Mute, right. Okay, thank you. Look, listening to all the different scenarios, we're certainly in certain times at the moment. We need to be looking at. There's a lot of struggling businesses out there. There's going to be some catastrophic effects from what's going on at the moment for this region, for the whole country. But we've got to look at what we can do ourselves to help our region get back on our feet again. Everyone has got bills. Everyone has got plenty of bills to pay, more than probably ever now. And rates is just another one of them. So we need to be making sure that we are seen to be supporting the region in the right way. I'm involved with a small business ourselves. We've had no income for over a month. Now it's going to be another 5 weeks, or another 2 weeks on top of that. So no rent, no income, no nothing. We're only one. We're one business of many businesses in this region that'll be in exactly the same boat. So we need to be seen to be supporting the region immediately. And we've got plenty of things that we're looking at for the future to do, which we can do in time. But at the moment, we need to be looking right now at how we can support our region and make it easy for people to survive. Now we're looking at the future down the track. That's what we're looking at the moment is a 2.2 or a 3.26, or continuing with our 4.87, which we know is not 4.87, it's 5.6, nearly getting up to 6 for our city dwellers. So we need to be looking really hard at what we're doing now for right now. So I'm really quite strong that we need to be really showing some leadership here and trying to help our community for the next couple of months in particular, because what's going to happen now is going to be quite dramatic to a lot of business owners.
Thank you for that, Larry. Next, I have Josh and then Meredith.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I do want to start off by saying that, by acknowledging the comments around uncertain times, where we all can't predict the future. We don't have a secret Gisborne District Council crystal ball that I know of. So we don't actually know what the detail will look like moving forward. However, I think one thing we can all agree on, though, is that everybody in our region will be impacted by this at least a little bit. At least. There will be some overs and there will be some unders, but I think we can agree that everyone in our region will be impacted at least a little bit. My priority in regards to this paper is about speed. I agree with Councillor Foster that we need to be providing at least a little bit of something fast. And that's why I'm in support of providing some reducing our overall rates revenue percentage in the short term. I do agree with Councillor Dowsing and Councillor Worsnop in regard and also Councillor Dunn in regards to the relook at our projects, and that's a medium term kind of thing about what we're doing moving forward in terms of our planning. I think that this paper that's in front of us is the first step in regards to us moving forward for our region and making decisions for our region to get ourselves, like Councillor Dunn has said, bouncing back from this pandemic. The first thing, though, for me is speed in regards to the relief that we can provide, at least a little bit for everyone, which is an overall rates revenue increase, but it's also other things too. Making it clear to our community that that you can defer your payment of rates for 3 months, making sure that we're providing that very easy access to information in regards to rate remission. That very easy access of information in regards to rates rebate. That will, for me, I think that will provide an immediate short-term small relief for our region. But I do want to support my colleagues that have quite rightly stated that actually we do need to fundamentally change some of the things that we're going to be doing moving forward, because I absolutely do agree that we can't just debt fund the same plan. You know, we need to relook at the plan. We need to laser focus into things like what has been mentioned: water, waste, roading. We do, on a principle-based level, we do agree that we need to defer the nice-to-haves. But I can guarantee you that out of the 14 of us, we all have different ideas what those nice-to-haves are. So that's why it's a medium-term goal, right? So that's something that we put off a little bit later so that we can come together and collectively agree what our collective nice-to-haves that we're going to put on the back burner for a bit are. We do need to see things like budgets, forecasts, and trade-offs and what all of those things will look like. But again, I want to come back to the speed thing. I think there is a viable decision in front of us in regards to being able to speedily provide relief and at least a little bit to everyone, because everyone will be impacted at least a little bit, and then also make sure our comms and our support of our ratepayers and our residents that are accessing our information in regards to the deferment of paying rates for 3 months, rates remission, DIA rates rebate, etc., etc. I think this is just the first stepping stone. So I'm in favour of reducing our percentage in regards to the overall rates revenue. I'm particularly in favour of reducing that of the 3.26%, because that's the one that we can do fast. Personally, I think that's the one that we can do fast, but again, happy to keep discussing it. That's me.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks for that. I'm going to move to Meredith and then Pat. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and obviously Pauline and Nadine and the staff in this space. coming back to my first statement of uncertainty, thank you. We've clarified that. The assessment around uncertainty isn't easy. I've just been reading about psychological stuff. There was a time when we were all about FOMO, the fear of missing out. Now it's FOGO, fear of going out. We know that this virus has caused a shift and a change in even thinking about being around people. So I wanted to ask, what are some of the benefits that can be done infrastructurally in the now because of less traffic, less people around in respect to those? See, my nice to have is the wastewater treatment running, and in the essence of what we've put forward to having that project up and doing what it needs to do. In my view, that from many of our residents who spoke to that is a key infrastructure that everyone knows we need to have up and running appropriately to meet all requirements. So I'm wondering, in the roading and in the infrastructure space right now, what benefits are there to us because of the lockdown and the levels that can mean people can actually get to doing those kind of projects? But also, has this shown that some of the mechanisms that we have in play as local government don't work or aren't as agile or stragile as they could be in a big picture? So can we speak to that? Can we motion to them, listen, as all councils are, we simply want to do the basics really well. We want to go back to infrastructure that needs to be done in our region. And we are trying to do it fiscally prudent and all the principles that we know we work within. So 2 questions, the mechanisms we have, are they old and dated and draconian and need to be need to be reconsidered, reviewed as far as this space, because the pandemic teaches us lots. And then also in respect to the benefits that come with the current situation we're in now, what can we actually get to when the levels start to change down, are my 2 questions.
Thank you, Meredith. Nadine.
Through your worship, and so when we went into lockdown, as we were leading in, you'll recall the key turning point for our region was when you all made the decision for us to close the War Memorial Theatre. And that happened way before any central government or local government guidelines around what alert levels would look like and what you should be doing at different levels. And I think that really did have a significant part to play in how we managed the rollout through that. And we were actually leading, in my view, on many local authorities in terms of our preparedness to move out, to lift and shift our organisation to a virtual space. So from that regard, in terms of local government response, it has been slower than we would have liked, especially around legislation. There was an all of government group working, a DIA, NEMA, LGNZ and the Society of Local Government Managers. They had a bit of a working group going on to try and provide guidance to the sector, but the legislation was just so slow to change. So I think even case in point around, the ability to have council meetings online like this. Similarly for Cabinet, they had to make some fast changes. And, you'll recall too, in terms of our voting online, our voting, voting online and trying to be part of that pilot. And that got killed because of all the other issues that were there around cyber safety and cost prohibitive. But actually, if you think about where we are now, it's probably something that should have been invested in. So, I think as the mechanism, it's bureaucracy, it's been slow to respond. I think in terms of the other question was around alert levels and the opportunities that brings with people not being there. So for the last 4 weeks, no one's been able to do anything. But come Tuesday, everybody is geared up to get out there, and there's still quite a bit of traffic on the roads, but it does present the opportunity to get on top of the maintenance and some of the other works that are needed. One thing that we're really interested about, just as an aside, is getting out there and looking and taking baseline from our environmental data, because this would, 4 weeks is going to be fantastic in terms of that information that will provide us around the environment and what the quality is like with people being locked at home.
Thanks for that, Nadine. I'm going to move to Pat. Pat, you're next.
I just want to thank Councillor Wharehinga for his very clear summation, because all of this discussion is really valid, but we know that we have to gather a rate to enable the council to deliver anything for the 2021 financial year, and certainly a huge amount of time and effort needs to be put into what 21-31 looks like, or the first 3 years of the next 10-year plan. So thanks, Josh, for making that really clear.
Thank you, Pat. Any more questions? I think we've had a great discussion this morning, and I've been taking some notes when we spoke, and I sent you a little email a few days ago that Ganesh Nana sent. I don't know if you had time to read it, just a little summary, a one-pager. And what struck me there is very important for all of us to remember, why do we do what we do? What is our job as councillors and as council? And I know all of us want to supply some immediate relief because it is much needed in our community. But I do want to give a heads up to everyone what Pat and Josh spoke about earlier. Going into our 10-year plan, it's going to be a different discussion from 10-year plan discussions we've had in the past. We will have to cut our cloth like the rest of our community do. We will have to have serious discussions if we still keep some projects on our books. It is not going to be the type of discussion which we've always had. It will need to be honest and it need to be realistic, because otherwise we are just doing our community a disservice. And the note that I taken here, asking what Dr. Ganesh said to me, if we do our job well as a council, if we do the basics well for our residents, if we have good plans in place and we support businesses, we don't obstruct them, we support them with our plans, then we are doing our basic jobs well. So I do want us to keep in mind, yes, we are looking at something doing now. We are looking at a shorter term, but for our long-term discussions, these are the types of basics we need to keep in our minds if we are really serious about serving our community well. So I just wanted to give you a heads up to start thinking, once we start working with our long-term plan, it will be a different discussion from what we usually had. I just want to quickly go to a question that Amber asked in our chat room. Nadine or Pauline, if one of you can answer what she asked, can we extend the rates postponement to 6 months rather than 3 months? Is that possible? And she said Josh's korero made her think about that. Can you respond, please?
Your Worship, yes, you can. In some councils, Wellington, they have got a 6 month. They're offering 6 months. They're first off 3 months, and then they, as people need it, they can extend it for an additional 3 months. So it's fluid.
Thank you. So is it just that we usually have 3 months, and that's what we usually have had, Pauline? Are you still muted, Pauline?
Your Worship, yes, it was through the indication if it was still locked down and they couldn't get back to businesses, maybe the recovery was only 3 months. But if it is extended from that, it can be applied as a longer term.
Thank you, Pauline. Andy Cranston, I'll come to you, Larry and Shannon, in a minute. I see Andy has asked, does that deferment means no penalties? Pauline.
Through Your Worship, that is correct, but it does mean that if it's a postponement and no payments are delayed for 6 months, we are saying that there is the cost of council's interest is applied to it, but no penalties if they apply for a postponement arrangement.
Thank you for that, Pauline. I'm going to move to Larry and then Shannon. Thank you. Larry, you're still on mute, my friend.
Yeah, sorry about that. I mentioned before about revaluation. So my question is, are the valuations being done pre-COVID-19, or are they going to be done, are they going to have to be all redone again after we get through this COVID-19 situation we're at the moment? Because the valuations are very important for the region, and one would think if they're not complete, they would be a bit inconsistent.
Who's going to answer that question? Where are we in our 3-year cycle for revaluations?
Well, it's supposed to be coming up this year.
June, July.
Yeah.
Free Worship, it is due this year. Our cycle is a little bit longer than people have, if they have this year. And so the process that we have, our valuers are getting the sales is up until 30th of June and processing that information. So we have a little bit longer than perhaps some of the others that had valuations in this year. It can take some impacts of that, but that should be taken into consideration by the valuers up until the 30th of June.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Pauline. Okay, next we move to Shannon. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. I'm ready to move recommendations if there's not a lot more discussion. And I'd like to move 5C, which is the lowest rates increase to 2.2%, based on the fact I don't think we're going to be carrying the projected debt because we've got an opportunity to readdress our long-term plan shortly, and we're going to and the debt levels projected out into the future will no longer be the same as what we're thinking of at the moment. And then also include the 6 months of deferral. And I'm sure that Pauline, the Chief Executive, can confirm Andy's question, which was, can it only be paid by lump sum, or can it be done by instalments? But yes, those are I'd like to move it all with
Shannon,
I'll second that.
Yep.
Can I just quickly interrupt you, Shannon? At number 6 of the recommendations, are you asking to change that to 6 months? Is that what you said?
Yes.
And who seconded that? You need to physically put your hand up.
I did.
Just wait a second. I just want to let you know, Larry Foster, just want to do 3 months there. Just for the people that are listening and don't have it in front of that, I thought I would just read through the recommendations. It is quite long, but just to be fair, it's not, we can't just vote and people don't really know what we voted on. So I'm going to know. So we've got quite a few. We've got 8 recommendations in front of us. And I want to ask councillors Pat, do you still want to say something before we vote? Oh.
Yes, please. I want to ask you to take 5 separately, because I think there may be other recommendations or other views on 5. So when you come to the vote, can you please take item 5 separately?
And I want to ask...
actually was going to observe, but I haven't bothered, that all of those items that are notes 1 to 4 actually don't need to be part of the recommendation. They're just part of the body of the report. And the recommendations are 5, 6, 7 and 8, but I can live with it how it is at the moment. But in real terms, 1 to 4 are simply a status of the environment around which this report has been written.
Okay.
And what we really are voting on is 5 to 8.
Yes, that is true, but sometimes we do have just some noting stuff in our recommendations as well. So I think I'll just read that and then we'll get there. But I just want to ask councillors, when we do come to voting, and I read, last time it didn't work well, so I think what I'll do when I read the voting, can you physically put your hand up so I can see it and keep it up when we vote? It's just so much easier than putting up the other little thumbs ups and things. That just drives me nuts. Okay. Number one, notes that COVID-19 has had an impact on Council's budget for the current year 1920 and is expected to have a significant impact on the 2021 annual plan. Number two, notes the Local Government New Zealand and Society of Local Government Managers guidance for the development of 2021 annual plans based on independent legal advice from Simpson Grierson as outlined in attachment 2. 3, notes that any option that requires a long-term plan amendment would not provide sufficient time to complete the 2021 annual plan / long-term plan by 30 June 2020 as required in the Local Government Act. 4, notes that an overall rates increase of 0% was considered, but it was deemed not to be prudent and not to be in the interest of future ratepayers. So, Pat, do you want me to do everything and then do 5 separately at the end?
Well, yes, I would like us to vote separately on 5. Thank you. Because I give notice that if it's lost, I'll be raising a different option.
6, agrees that ratepayers can apply for instalment 4 of the 2019/20 rates for a 6-month deferral period in accordance with Council's current rates postponement policies. 7, agrees that the rates remission will be made available to those ratepayers who apply for it and who qualify on hardship grounds in accordance with Council's current rate remissions policy. 8, agrees that A, the budgets will be increased by $1 million to recognise rate remissions applied for on grounds of hardship as a result of COVID-19. B, the financial assistance rate FAR reserve of up to 1 million can be redirected to fund rates remissions resulting from COVID-19. All in favour? Need to physically put, I'm just looking through the whole. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we move to number 5. Agrees that the preferred option for the 2021 annual plan will be either A, based on option 1, the draft annual plan, which forecast a 4.87 official rates revenue increase, B, based on option 2, which forecasts 3.26 overall rates increase, or C, based on option 3, which forecasts a 2.2 overall rates increase. So I have a mover for option number C. The mover is Councillor Dowsing and the seconder is Councillor Foster. All in favour, please put up your hands.
Aye.
Bill, I'm just going to write it down, people, because it is not easy. Against? Okay, lost.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. I indicated that I was happy to raise a different recommendation at 5, and I move that we agree the preferred option for 2021 is based on option 2, forecasting a 3.26 overall rates revenue, which was roughly a few months ago, and it's only been changed latterly. Thank you, Councillor Borrohanger.
Okay, so we've got a mover for option B. So we're at 5, and I've just read the options. So I've got a mover in Councillor Seymour and a seconder in Councillor Wharehinga. Hands up, please. Kerry, is your hand up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Against? Hands up, please.
Aye.
Against.
Yeah.
Did you vote for it or against it, Bill?
Against it.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Carried. Thank you. So we have number 5B based on option 2, which forecast a 3.26 overall rates revenue. So we are reducing our rates take this year to go back to our original long-term plan, which we had before.
Next year we're talking about.
Yes, so it's for next year. So for our 2021 annual plan, we will go back to the original rate we had in our long-term plan. So there will be a reduction in our overall rates take. Councillors, I want to thank you so much for your thorough discussion on all of this. There are a few more things that I would like to chat to you about. It's not on our agenda, but Nadine, I just want to ask you, because I want to do it while Aaron is still here, just talk about a letter that I received from the Remuneration Authority, because I did promise the media who contacted me that we would chat about this today. And Aaron, I will be emailing this letter to you later, but I did say we will publicly discuss this. Nadine, yes, you put your hand up.
Apologies, Your Worship, that was more, and did you want me to hang on the line for just a quick Q&A from councillors around what was happening, not particularly on this matter?
Councillors, do you have some specific questions of our CEO or Pauline before we go? Put your hand, physically put your, oh, Amber Dunn's hand has gone up. Kerry, Andy. Okay, let's start with Amber, then it's Kerry, and then it is Andy. Can you just put your little blue hands up, because that reminds me of where we are, Kerry and Andy. Thank you. Go, Amber Dunn.
And I want to ask a question.
Thank you. Bill, just after Amber, you can take it.
Sure. I just wanted to say a big thank you to Nadine and Pauline for the work they've done in the past couple of weeks regarding this matter. Haven't had a chance to say thank you, but I realise that everyone's working really hard behind the scenes. That I messaged Pauline in the weekend to ask a question, and I got a response straight away. So thank you for the effort that's gone in, and yeah, it is important, and I just wanted to acknowledge the staff, Nadine, Pauline, and all of your workers for that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Amber, and I want to echo it as well. Pauline, I know you've been steaming away, because even though this is a relatively small decision in the big picture, all our business are interconnected and it's got downstream effects. So even though it might look small to us, I do know there's so much work that goes on in there. So thank you to both of you. We move to Kerry and then Andy.
Yeah, I will second that. I realise you guys will have been under quite a bit of pressure to deliver all this, so thank you for that. I guess I just wanted to ask, I found that decision really hard. A big part of me wanted to go with the first option. I've gone with the second option because I want us to make sure we make as much money available to help those directly and most affected by this downturn. And so just on that, can we make it really clear that businesses are eligible for these remissions? I didn't find it clear in the policy. In fact, I'm not sure that anyone reading the policy would see that. So I just think that, you know, given that our businesses are going to be under huge pressure, we need to communicate that to them. Or else they're not going to see that drop in rates as having any benefit really materially to them. So yeah, that would be my comment to you, particularly Nadine. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thanks for that, Kerry. Andy first, and then Meredith Akwaka Brown.
I prefer mine to be private, if possible.
Okay, yeah, we'll catch up a little bit later. I'm just mindful, Bill, you were wanting to make a comment. Now is your time, and then Meredith, thank you.
Yeah, no, when I say comment, I just want to acknowledge Nadine and the staff and the work they've put in. But I have two questions regarding, and we discussed it, in terms of our disinfection plant. How far advanced in terms of the planning, consenting, are we in terms of where we are today? That's the first one, direct to Nadine.
are we going to have our general discussion now, Your Worship?
Because my idea was that anything that we still want some open questions is now's the time we are together, and then later I will just update just before Aaron leaves us. I'll quickly talk about the remuneration, and then we'll just have a little councillor social catch up later.
Okay, so well, there's some things that I, depending on the nature of the question, will respond to. Councillor Burdett, just in terms of the wastewater treatment plant, we've got a meeting this, is that today or tomorrow, just to look at the revised numbers on that from the team. So they're still been planning in the lockdown. We're still on track, no delays there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And in terms of the PGF funding, our roading contracts, and where they are at present, how spade ready are they, or are they being actioned now by way of tender, or have the contracts been let?
Two parts to that, Councillor Burdett. So there's the accelerated, so the additional, I think it was 20 mil that the team's been planning for, so they'll be ready to go come Tuesday. And then on top of that, there's the $15 million of redeployment funding that we've been working with the Provincial Development Unit around the requirements for that redeployment, the kind of social procurement outcomes that we're trying to seek, so that we've given ourselves an extra couple of weeks on that one, so that we can get everything lined up and be ready to go shortly.
Thank you.
Kia ora, Nadine. My question was just really around the comms discussion that a couple of councillors have alluded to in respect to ensuring, because I do know, thankfully, we've got the media here, kia ora, Aaron, that are going to put us front page in respect to this decision based on previous Herald's discussions, front page wise, that we were all going, whoa, hey. So I just wanted to just ask, are we confident that the comms space of articulating well this decision isn't easy based on current events, but also that we are being as fiscally, I'm just really concerned that sometimes we still aren't able to confidently assure our resident ratepayer why this decision, but how we communicate that around those remits, all those, loud spaces during this time of hardship. And so how confident as far as press releases going out, but also other mechanisms, we get much feedback from our community in respect to the knowledge we're sharing now based on what we have to do as a council. So just the confidence around comms is my question. And obviously we've all got, those of us on social media will be posting out things, so ensuring that our messages are all the same. So just wondering about the comms plan.
So there's lots going on in the comms area, with our team busily supporting our emergency centre as well as council business. And I think they've been doing a fantastic job, as well as Her Worship's daily live feeds. We've been getting really good feedback that they're informative, and particularly our Facebook feeds are really informative around COVID as well as council. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it's going there. Heavy demand, especially, I think this is where comms comes into its own, is when you're stuck at home in a pandemic. This is really where you need that grunt work to be behind you to get that message out to our community.
Okay, Pat, your question, and then we're going to quickly talk about the remuneration.
Yeah, two things, Madam Chair. I just think that we need to be careful about what you're introducing that is not an agenda item, because this is a formal council meeting and we normally would have notice of what the agenda items are. And it's really good to have the opportunity to have a chat and ask all our questions, but we still should remember that this is a formal council meeting and no decision can be made on that paper that you're planning to wave at us. Just one other point to Councillor Worsnop's question about making sure businesses benefit from this rating decision that we've made, or future decision, particularly for small business. We have to be really mindful that in actual fact, they're often not the ratepayer. A small business is in a premise where someone else pays the rates, and it won't be in council's hands whether or not benefit of the reduced rate is passed on. So we just need to be really conscious of that, because I think that will be an issue for some small businesses. But I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Pat. Yes, no, I agree with what you say also about what's on our agenda and what's not on our agenda. I just thought it would be worthwhile. We're not going to make any decisions. I'm just going to allude to the letter that was sent, just because the media had some queries around that, and then I'll send it to Aaron, and then we will have a little chat afterwards. So I just wanted to say that throughout the whole country, everyone knows authorities have been contacted to say they should take pay cuts, or the Prime Minister did that. And we received clear direction yesterday, because we all as mayors wrote to the Remuneration Authority saying there's quite a bit of confusion because we do not set our salaries. We're not in charge of that. Obviously, it's open to anyone what they want to donate, and heaps of us do donate locally anyway, so it is up to a person individually to decide. But I thought I would just share with just a few points, and then I will email this letter to the paper as well. But just the crux of it is that the Remuneration Authority, there are just 3 points that they wanted to raise. The law prohibits any of our clients, and the clients are local government members of parliament, anyone, to make unilateral decisions about their remuneration. This does not stop you to make any donations to any organisation at all. Number two, under the current legislation, we are unable to decrease the remuneration of any of our clients. And number three is, in future, they are able to decide on a zero increase. But what they said to us is there are some indications that the government are looking at a COVID-19 omnibus bill that will envelop all of these developments. So they will be possibly looking at what has been happening in the last while, but they really discourage anyone from making decisions. So on behalf of our council, I'll be taking this advice as well. She said, we suggest that you and your council refrain from any decisions that you are able to make on your remuneration until it's clear if the government might make this COVID bill in any way introduce a reduction, or not introduce a reduction, or have more clearer guidelines. So I just wanted to allude that as a council, we will not be making any decisions at this stage. We will be following the advice from the Remuneration Authority, and in due time, there might be some guidance coming out around that. But like I say, anyone is welcome and encouraged to make donations to local charities, or where they feel they want to make a contribution. And like I also said, lots of councillors I know are already doing that. So Aaron, I just wanted to share this with you, and I will share the email, the letter to you as well. And I do want to thank the Gisborne Herald today for attending our meeting. Thank you, Aaron, for and we will catch up with you a little bit later. If there's any clarity that you need, please just flick me an email and we can give you that clarity if there's any confusion about what happened today, or because it's not the same as being in a virtual meeting. But hey, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks. Bye-bye. Okay, councillor. Sorry, I should have asked these questions after.
Hold on, your worship. Our